So how many of you, raise your hands, like still to this day, even if you've been doing this a long time, I've been in my industry for about 8 years. So network marketing, which really network marketing, that is just building relationships pretty much all day, every day. That's what I do. There's really nothing else to it. So how many of y'all in your industry still to this day get anxious or a little unsettled if you are like putting yourself out there and offering your services to someone? So I do. Okay. Or maybe you're just like so boldly confident that you just don't get anxious anymore. But I know for me, even 8 years into this, especially, let me break it down into maybe something that y'all would understand. Maybe somebody that you can kind of tell, or maybe you've been told that they might not be the easiest to please or work with. Okay, would you still just be jumping up and down to offer your services to them, or would you kind of run the other way and let somebody else take them, right? So really, my hand is up because I still very much get anxious, especially in situations like this where I'm not talking to my phone, I'm talking in real life. But would you call that, if you finally reach the point, do you think that you finally reach a point where you're just not anxious anymore? When you have certain people, would you call that like you finally reached true success if you don't get anxious anymore and you're just so confident in what you do? Or would you define like true success as more money? I like money. I don't want to be broke. It's okay, like money. Would you define true success? And I want you to, you don't have to say it out loud, but I want you to think as I'm kind of going through these things in your own head of what you truly feel like that means to you. So being confident where you don't get anxious anymore and you're just very bold in what you do and how you present yourself, or more money, or maybe it's popularity, which might be a funny word for those of us that aren't teenagers, but truly, do you want people to know who you are and recognize your billboard or recognize your name? Is that kind of what you would call true success if you finally achieved that? Or, maybe it's awards within our community or our state or anything like that. What I have found through my time with working is that true success is none of those things. It's knowing that you are right in the midst of what God's called you to do, and you're living that out boldly. So that's what I have come to learn. All the other things, not necessarily bad, not bad to want those things, but truly being successful and being able to say, I feel successful in what I do, is knowing that you are right there in God's will of what He's called you to do. So something that Sherry didn't share in my little introduction that might be interesting to know is that I have been, since I was 2, a PK. A PK. So let the assumptions begin. I am a preacher's kid still to this day. I figured since we all live in East Texas, that we would know what that is. But I have been a preacher's kid, still am to this day, since I was 2. And you can let your mind wonder of what that meant growing up. But I don't think I was all that typical of a preacher's kid, maybe. I don't know. I'm looking at my in-laws. They've known me a long time. But and Miss Smith, she's known me a very long time. But I always kind of had that healthy, reverent fear, of my parents. Still kind of do. But I'm saying this to say almost every single time I speak to people, it never fails. I end up sharing something that my dad's instilled in my life. That's kind of the blessing of having a dad that's a pastor as your dad, because even last night, we actually ate dinner with him, and we went to pick it up because it was raining and miserable, and I had a little counseling session with him about, some things going on in my life, and so that's one of the blessings of having him. But what I'm going to share of success and some of the little nuggets that he's really kind of impressed on my heart really has to do with that. So let's go back to that first question, but let me preface it this time by saying, if you knew that God's will was going to prevail no matter what. God's will, Lord, have your will, that's what was going to happen. Would you still have those anxious feelings when you're speaking with someone or offering your services? Even if you knew that they were going to be not so easy to please or difficult to work with. If you knew that that's what God was calling you to do, would you still have those anxious feelings? And this is where the little nugget comes in that he's always taught me, is that, you know, if God wants it for you, then there's nothing you can do to mess that up. And on the flip side, if God doesn't want that for you, there's nothing I can do to make that happen. Okay? So my bold confidence in my work shouldn't be coming from myself. It should be coming from not my capabilities or my hard work or how much I hustle, but it should be coming from him leading me to that and where he's brought me. And I know when I say that, I don't mean, I'm not talking about so much that the world preaches to us these days about manifesting, or, you know, you think on it so much, then it'll happen and all of that. It's actually quite the opposite, because it's just saying, God, you lead me here and do your thing through me. And so that really kind of goes against everything that, especially in, I don't know about y'all's realm of work, but in mine especially, I hear that a lot, and I have to really stand firm in my faith and know that that's not what I believe. So the first time I can remember that my dad kind of shared this with me, I guess when it really kind of stuck, was we were very newly married. We had just moved to Weatherford, Texas. Anybody know where that is? And it might seem like it's not far away, but when you're 23 and you're just living on love, and you move far away to a city that everybody owned horses except for you. My husband did, but I didn't know anything about any of that, and I just felt lost. I was like, it shook my world, even though it wasn't that far away, because it was all so new to me. But I can remember, I've got to find a job. I worked in the dental field for many years, and I just, you know, I've got to find a job, and it wasn't that big of a city, and I can remember I had an interview set up for basically the place that everybody wanted to work, you know, and I can remember just being overwhelmed with doubt and fears of why. First of all, I don't even know if they're hiring, and second of all, why would they hire me? You know, if they've got everybody that wants to work here, why on earth would they hire me? It was a horrible, like, so stressful interview process. You had to interview with the three doctors, and then they sat you down in front of all the coworkers to let them interview you too, like all women. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to get this. I'm never going to find a job here, da-da-da. And I remember calling my dad, and he told me that. He said, if that's the job that God's calling you to do, you could walk in late, which I never would. You could say all the wrong words. You know, you could be the worst dressed there, whatever. And if that's what he's calling you to do, then you're going to get that job. And also, if he doesn't want you to have that job, you could do everything perfectly and you still not get it. And what that did, when he told me that, it hit me that that's when the pressure gets taken off. There's no pressure. So there's no pressure if you know that whatever his will is going to be, I'm here, I'm available for him to do what he wants to do, but his will is going to happen. Maybe with you guys in the kind of work that y'all are in, maybe you think about a saturated market. Okay, I also hear that in network marketing. Like, I would never want to come to work for that or do that. That would never be on my radar of things to do, because people do that everywhere. I mean, I know there's a lot of realtors in this area. It's the same way with my work. But again, the pressure's off if God's calling you to do that. You don't have to worry about any of the other questions. The bottom line is he has plans for you. He has plans for you. He has plans for me. They're different. Your plans are not my plans. And that takes the pressure off too, because sometimes we fall into the trap of comparison. And, you know, if I'm in my lane focused on God's will for my life, even with my work, even if the market's oversaturated, or even if I'm working with someone difficult, I'm just here to focus on His will for my life. So, yeah, that's one of my dad's favorite verses too, is Jeremiah 29:11. I'm sure you guys all know it. I know the plans I have for you. It's really nice to insert your name right there when you say that verse. I've gotten in the habit of every time I read that verse or I say that verse, I say, "For I know the plans I have for you, Lindsay, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you and give you hope in the future." And I'm not talking about prosper you like prosperity gospel, because that's a whole other thing that I'm not talking about either, kind of like with the manifesting. I'm just talking about God's taking care of us. And prosperous could simply mean we're sitting here in a warm room with a roof over our heads. And there's a lot of people, even right now, that aren't. So, okay, got to focus. You may be asking yourself, but what does this have to do with building a firm foundation with my work? But whatever line of work you're doing, and it may be real estate right now, it may be, you know, that this morning I was sitting with a 4-year-old on my lap. It may be cleaning my house this afternoon. It may be that you are, you know, a really big, popular realtor in town. Whatever the things you're doing, it's for a purpose. And God has led you there. And if we keep our focus on Him and glorifying Him through our work and not ourselves, then how can we fail? You know, if we keep our focus on that. So another verse that I love is Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord and not for men. I love that one, but always try to keep that in mind, especially on those days when I am just surrounded by kids and laundry and all that. You know, whatever I do, I'm doing this for the Lord and not for myself or for anyone else. But have you ever truly just paused and thought to yourself, why does God have me doing what I'm doing right now? So this is another one of those where, you know, I want y'all to think in your head, have I ever thought about, why does God have me doing this? You know, it may be that we want to make a living or we want to get our name out there or any of those things, but I'm talking about the root of why does God have you doing what you're doing. I know for me, working primarily on social media in the day that we live in, social media has become kind of hard to be on. I'm sure a lot of y'all are on there too, and just, you know, it's kind of like a breeding ground for arguments and giving opinions and all that. And there have been so many days where I'm like, I don't want any part of this, but I can't step away from social media because that's my job and that's how I make a living. So God's saying, nope, not worried about that. This is what I've called you to do. And until He tells me don't do this anymore, I still got to show up and I still got to, you know, do what I do. And same goes for you until He calls you elsewhere, if He does. But another thing that I've really realized over the last years of social selling and being on social media is that I do like makeup and skincare, by the way. So, and if you're a makeup artist, don't judge, because I'm not saying I'm a makeup artist. I just teach, like, you know, regular old people how to do some fun stuff. But 9 times out of 10, if I'm doing something and talking to someone and building that relationship and we get to knowing each other and all of that, it's not about the makeup and it's not about the skincare. It's not about social media. Maybe for you, it's not even about them wanting to buy a house. Or it's not about, you know, the move or whatever they're going through with you. That's something I also realized. Like I said, I worked in the dental field for about 10 years and I absolutely loved it. I miss it a lot. God's been very good to give me a couple of opportunities to go do dental work in the middle of nowhere for some mission trips. So that's been a lot of fun, how He's kind of filled that need and desire. But I can remember working in the dental field, kind of the same thing. I didn't make a lot of money. I did enjoy my job, But there were so many instances that I could tell that God had me where he had me, like for such a bigger purpose than just being in the dental field, you know. There were so many patients that would come in and they were just beside themselves with anxiety. You know, nobody likes going to the dentist except for a few of us, but, and then by the end of it, giving me a big hug with tears saying like, thank you for being here with me. You know, that's what it's about. And it's the same way with what you guys do and what I do. It's very rarely ever about, you know, the work, the houses, the numbers, the money, all that, you know, has to kind of be a part of it, but it's not the most important. And it's not what God sees as important. His is the meaning behind it and why he has you there. So when we are resting in his will and doing exactly what he's called you to do, that's when you're going to feel true success. I've built so many relationships, some even in this room, that I literally wouldn't have even known if it wasn't for where he's led me. And social media is such a blessing in that way because, you know, it reaches the whole world. Like everybody's on it, you know. And so I've met so many people and been able to walk with them through hardships or just simply been a listening ear, been an encouragement, been a cheerleader, just walked with them and held their hand through, you know, hard times or happy times or whatever. And I think that's what we're all able and capable of doing if we'll just get our focus on what he's called us to do. And yeah, so let me leave you with two things. The first being, I want to challenge you that when you leave the rest of this week, even though, you know, it's really gross outside, maybe you have some calls to make or places to go, and it's not ideal outside at all, look for those opportunities. Ask yourself, you know, God, you've brought me here. You've brought me to this company or this place. You've brought me to this line of work. Who do you want me to reach out to this week? Our pastor, Brother Sam, I love him. He's like a second dad to me, and he always says, you know, I wake up in the morning and I say, all right, God, give me your orders. And so think about that this week just as you continue on with your walk and just what he would have you to do. And you would be surprised how he really will show you, you know, if you just ask and you just look for it and you just make yourself more aware of what your true intention of being there is. And then second is song lyrics from Stephen Curtis Chapman. It's a song called Do Everything. And I love it. I was singing it in the shower last night while I was washing my hair, thinking about this. And this is going to start on the second verse. I'm not going to sing it. I'm just going to say it. But it says, maybe you're that guy with the suit and tie. Maybe your shirt says your name. You may be hooking up mergers or cooking up burgers. But at the end of the day, little stuff, big stuff, in between stuff, God sees it all the same. While I may not know you, I bet I know. You wonder sometimes, does it matter at all? Let me remind you, it all matters just as long as you do everything you do for the glory of the one who made you, because he made you. Every little thing that you do to bring a smile to his face, tell the story of grace with every move that you make and everything that you do. So, that's it.